Alright, get in here. Just the person I wanted to see, too. You doing alright? Of course you are. You're above ground, you're still breathing, and best of all, you're about to watch another video from me, the gaming mobster, Screwface Capone. You lucked out today. Then again, you always get lucky when I show up on your YouTube feed. Anyway, last week I put up the latest part of the King of Fighters Retrospective. That will be part 2 of the Tales of Ash story arc, which covered King of Fighters 11. I'm hard at work on the next part, which will close out the story arc with King of Fighters 13. Now, you already know how long I take putting these things out, plus I got other videos I'm working on too. For now though, this should seem like a good enough morsel to tide you over. Besides, I've been planning on going over the spin-offs anyway, so why not start with this one, right? Today we're going to take a look at King of Fighters Newowave, which is one of the weirder entries in the franchise. At least one of the weirder entries that's still a fighting game. You know, as opposed to the shoot 'em up, the rhythm action game, and the mobile game that crossed over with everything from Street Fighter to Tekken to the 7 Deadly Sins to even the WWE. Anyway, let's check it out. If you've seen the last installment of my King of Fighters retrospective, wait, what do you mean haven't seen it? Go back and watch it already. Matter of fact, watch the whole series, there's need to know information in there. You know what, here's the TLDR for now. After King of Fighters 2003, SNK was looking for a new arcade platform to replace its aging Neo Geo hardware. They would strike a deal with Sammy to use its Atomiswave arcade board for a number of its games. Neowave was in fact the first SNK game to use the new hardware. It's basically a demo for how future SNK games would look utilizing the board. At the time, the game that would eventually become King of Fighters 11 was in development, so Neowave would give fans a first look at what the game would possibly look at. Neowave is what was known as a Dream Match game. Some of you are wondering what a Dream Match game is. The rest of you who saw my King of Fighters series already know that the Dream Match games are games in the series that don't have a storyline or ending and are basically there to bring back fan favorite characters who are gone from previous installments. Outside of Neowave, SNK had put out 3 Dream Match entries in the series. These are 98, 2002, and King of Fighters 12. Because of their huge character list, at least 98 and 2002, they tend to be the most popular games in this series among the fan base. 98 and 2002 would even receive remakes by way of 98 Ultimate Match and Unlimited Match 2002. That's a story for another time. In fact, I already went through this story in part 4 of my retrospective where I discussed Dream Match entries. Neowave was basically a kinda, sorta remake of King of Fighters 2002, so most of the movesets and team lineups were similar. Also, some of the features from later King of Fighters games, most notably the tag system from 2003, were absent, and this would be a traditional 3-on-3 elimination match. When you picked out your characters, there are 3 gauge systems that you can pick from, each of these having slight differences when it came to how your meter worked, what number of stocks you had access to, and what offensive and defensive techniques that you can utilize. First, there's the Super Cancel mode. This allowed the use of the Super Cancel, in which normal and special moves can be cancelled into supers, and this gave you 3 maximum meter stocks. Guard Break allowed players to use an unblockable attack that used 1 whole meter stock, and it gave you 2 maximum meter stocks for your super gauge. This mode also allowed players to utilize a version of the Just Defend maneuver. The Just Defend maneuver reduced the stun time and filled part of your super meter if you blocked right before an attack connected. This version was slightly different from the one that was utilized in past games like Mark of the Wolves, where you can restore part of your health using the technique. The final mode is Max 2, where you get only 1 meter, but it fills automatically. In addition, you can use a Super Desperation move infinitely when your health meter is in the red and you have increased damage capabilities. At a cost, however, players in Max 2 can't use any of the rolling techniques save for the recovery roll. These three meter systems haven't been seen in the series before Neowave, and they haven't been seen since. Another mechanic that was exclusive to this entry was heat mode. By pressing a button, your character would flash red to indicate that they could do more damage with their attacks. However, their meter would slowly drain. If you press the button again, then heat mode would be deactivated. As for the roster, Neowave's lineup is similar to that of King of Fighters 2002, but with a number of small changes. King will replace Mei Lee in the Women Fighters team, bringing back the original lineup for the first time since King of Fighters 95, while Jun Hoon replaced Kim Kap Won on Team Korea, with Kim oddly enough being a hidden character. The Orochi team were in the game along with their awakened counterparts, who are also included as hidden characters. Finally, Shingo, Kula, and Saishu Kusanagi were included in the game as part of their own separate team. It should be noted that this team didn't exist in the original version of 2002. In fact, Kula was a mid-boss in that game, while Shingo was only available in the home console versions. This would also mark Saishu's first appearance as a playable character in the King of Fighters game since '98. Another thing I should note is that SNK will remove the characters that were created by Eolith, at least in the arcade version. In the PlayStation 2 version, however, Angel and Mei Lee were available as hidden characters. Oddly, Vanessa and Ramon are also hidden characters in the arcade game, while Seth was a hidden character too, but he was only in the home console release. This was especially weird because all three of them were a team in 2002. Speaking of hidden characters, Omega Rugal and Kusanagi, who's the evil version of Kyo, were also included in the home releases as hidden characters. But unlike the other hidden characters, you have to unlock Seth, Kusanagi, and Rugal, whereas you can just hold down a button while highlighting certain characters to pick Vanessa, Kim, and Ramon. Also, I know this was meant to be a remake of 2002, but it was disappointing that they left out newer characters such as Ash, Duolan, and Taizak. So wait a minute, if Rugal's a hidden character and not the final boss, who's running the show this time? Well, it was none other than Geese Howard. What's even weirder is that this was the young Geese Howard, as seen as a hidden final boss in Art of Fighting 2. Completely random, right? King of Fighters Newowave was released in 2004 in Japanese arcades. It will later come to the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Oddly enough, the PlayStation 2 version was only released in Japan and Europe, while the Xbox version was released in Japan, Europe, and the US. There was no reason given for snubbing PS2 users in the USA. Rumor had it that Sony Computer Entertainment of America had a policy against straight 2D ports, but I couldn't find any definite source to back this up, especially since they had released King of Fighters 11 on the platform. Surprisingly, the Xbox version was made backwardly compatible on the Xbox One and Series X, and you can purchase it online for $10. Though I find it rather weird that this was made backwardly compatible, but not King of Fighters 2003, 2002, or even Maximum Impact. The home versions give players the ability to choose between the arcade two-dimensional backgrounds and the home console 3D backgrounds. You also have options for classic or arranged versions of the soundtrack. I wasn't really sure why, since the Atomiswave board music quality was better than that of the Neo Geo, but I'm not going to complain about an extra feature. While the Xbox port doesn't have Angel or Mei as hidden characters, it makes up for it with Xbox Live online gameplay. At least it did until the servers were shut down. The gameplay is on point for King of Fighters, although the system does feel like a bit of a step back compared to past King of Fighters games, but again, this was meant to be a demo for a new arcade system, and at the least it gives players some variety. However, there's something about the game that felt off-putting, from some of the roster choices, to the graphics, and even the decision to have young Geese Howard as the final boss. The character art also feels a bit weird, and the music doesn't sound like something you'd expect from a King of Fighters game. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it or even that it's bad, It just feels like a strange vibe is all. The graphics are somewhat improved over the classic Neo Geo games. It might not be too noticeable at first, but if you do a side-to-side comparison with this and an older King of Fighters game, you'll notice some improvements off the top. Some of the backgrounds got that feeling of 2D sprites standing in front of a green screen, but the effect isn't as bad here as it was in, say, King of Fighters 2001's console graphics mode. With the 3D console graphics, it sometimes looks weird having 2D sprites in front of a 3D background, but again, it's not that noticeable, and later SNK games that use Atomiswave did a much better job with the graphical immersion. Among them are obviously King of Fighters 11. As far as the general reception about this game, it seemed like people either liked it or they didn't. If you enjoyed it, it was because of the graphics, the huge roster, and a solid moveset. If you didn't like it, it was because it didn't do much to move the series forward. Gaming media was generally the most harsh on it, as it usually gave around middle-of-the-road reviews, usually in the high 50s to mid 60s. As for me personally, Neowave is what I like to call a museum piece. By that, I mean a game that was made strictly for a certain purpose in mind. In this case, it was obviously to show what a King of Fighters game will look like with new hardware. And when it comes to that, it does what it's supposed to do. I can see hardcore King of Fighters fans wanting to check this out at least once, but you're not missing a whole lot if you decide to skip it. If you want to play the game, it starts usually around $40 if you're hunting on eBay. And the digital version is only $10 on Xbox Live, as I mentioned earlier. So if 2 characters don't mean that much to you, I'll recommend going that route. That is, if you have no problem paying for it. Sailing the 7 seas is always an option too. And that wraps it up for this video. If you made it this far, hit the comments and let me know your preferred team lineup for King of Fighters. It doesn't matter what game they're in or if it's an edit team. Let me know what 3 characters you usually like to join together. Mine is Kusanagi, Yagami, and Terry Bogard. If you enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up and make sure you share it to let your friends know. I like to cover indie titles along with retro games and cool hardware, so if that sounds good to you, join the Mafia by hitting that subscribe button and I'll make you a made man. If you want to do one better, make sure that notification bell is turned on, and whenever I drop new content, you'll be the first to know about it. I got a lot of stuff in the pipeline too, so you're not going to want to miss any of it. Until next time, I'm Audi 51000G, kinfolk.